Welcome back to part 2 of this little mini series that I'm hoping to not stretch out to 47 parts. But today we're going to take a walk around of the vehicle that I'm putting that engine into, my 98 Chevrolet K2500 Cheyenne. And we'll talk about how we got it and where it's at and, all that good stuff. So let's go take a look. Well, there she is. Like I said, 98 Chevrolet K2500, which means 3/4 ton. You had the K1500, 2500, 3500 back in this GMT 400 platform. Now, these were made from 1988 to 98 on paper. Well, that's actually wrong. You could get them in 99 and a half too, but the new body style, the GMT 800, came out in 99 and a half on the half-ton models. The 3/4 ton in this body style was still available up till 2000, and then the 1-ton two-wheel drives, you could get them in 01 and 02 in the heavy-duty versions. Now, with all that being said, you could get these with a slew of engine options. They had the 4.3 V6, the 5.0 V8, 5.7 V8, 7.4 big block V8, 6.2 V8 diesel, 6.5 V8 turbo diesel. Now, the most common engine that you find in these still today on the road is that 5.7 liter V8. They were capable of doing well over 250,000 miles without even sweating it. Generally, you'll have intake manifold gasket failures. They'll start leaking coolant and oil, but they'll run forever. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but these things, they spit out about 255 horsepower and 330 foot-pounds of torque. And now that's measured at the crank. Now, on a 3/4 ton, they have a little bit larger of a transmission in them and rear end, and by the time that power gets to the rear tires, you're lucky to squeak out 200 horsepower. So the backstory on this truck, it was purchased brand new in 98 from a RV dealership in Saginaw, Michigan. They bought the truck, they bought a Western plow, and they just used it to plow the lot and, tow some campers around. There's a 5th wheel hitch in the back. I still have the plow way over there. I had the plow sandblasted and repowder coated red and black, so that's all minty again. I'll drop some pictures of the way the truck looked when I got it. I bought it from a friend of mine who got it from a friend of his. The truck wasn't running when he bought it. They basically ran into an issue where the truck would no longer run. They threw a bunch of parts at it and then decided that they don't need it anymore. So we scooped it up and cranked it over. It cranked, it didn't start. It had shiny new plugs and wires and distributor cap and rotor on it, but while cranking, I noticed the distributor didn't even turn, so I pulled the distributor out. The gear was worn, threw an O'Reilly's distributor back in it, and it fired right up. Hell yeah. Now, the main purpose for this vehicle here is something to drive in the winter. The plow's nice. I've always kept one of these in the stable. Ever since I was 16, I had one of these trucks. They're very reliable, easy to work on. Parts are readily available. And quite frankly, at this point, I've pretty much seen every issue these have and I know how to fix it. So it's just easy to have one of these around. Now, this truck had just over 100,000 miles. I mean, like just ticked over 100K when we got her. Now it has 116,000. But I'm noticing the oil cooler lines and the oil pan and the intake gaskets and the valve cover gaskets and the rear main seal are all leaking. And instead of climbing under there and doing all that work for an engine that makes 200 if we're lucky at the tires, we'll just throw together an engine and just dump it in there and be done with it. So here's just a quick walk around before we get to the business. And yep, you might have noticed, it now has rockers and cab corners both. So the story on that is I picked up this cab from a friend of mine named Luke. It's an 89 cab, so I had to kind of do a little conversion to make the newer interior work from the 95 and up. He was gracious enough to give me a couple of bucket seats from a 99 Tahoe that are heated leather. So I made a harness and made the heat work and the power and all that stuff. I threw a new GM grill, headlights, mirrors, cab lights, all that good stuff on there. Some body molding that Steve sold me, some wheels from Jegs. Those are from the next body style up. Those are called PYOs. Just one of my favorite wheels, 8 lug. And besides all that, I went through the brakes, the suspension, just went through the entire truck to make it 100%. And I've driven it a couple winters now, and there's some spots that are starting, but we'll take care of all that. Once the engine's in it and it runs, we'll prepare it for next winter. Now, I'm sure you noticed there's a Yukon body sitting on a trailer without a chassis underneath it. Let's go ahead and roll the footage on how me and my good friend and neighbor Jeremy got that where it's sitting. Well, this is the chassis without the body on it. And as we expected, there was a lot of rust. But before we talk about that, let's talk about this. Now, I needed a way to lift that engine and trans, and I didn't really feel like using a cherry picker or my lower back. So I picked up one of them Harbor Freight electric hoists and just kind of reinforced my lean-to. Added some 2x6s and some blocking and all kinds of stuff. Added some electricitals. Got me a power box there and one down there. So that should be good enough to pull this engine off that frame. So let's just waltz around this thing and see, what everybody is wanting to see. So we talked about in the first video the body mount holes. Like I thought, they were all blown out. You can see here the gas tank has one good strap on it anyways. The fuel sending unit is completely rotted, and this is actually very common on your 07 and ups. They have a steel fuel sending unit, and this will rust out and you'll get engine like fault codes for evap large leaks. This one here doesn't have any holes in it yet, but I think it's getting close. Now, if we scoot a little further back, we'll see just a lot of rust. Yeah, that hole should not be that big. This is when you see something, crashes and the body flies off. That's because of that. And over here you can see, in the first video we talked about that Z55 suspension. Now that had air in the back and magnetic struts in the front. Well, the cheap alternative way to swap that is you delete your air shocks, or maybe you don't, you just let them be blown, and you can wire in a resistor that will trick the vehicle into thinking that everything is fine and dandy back here. So that's, you'll see that a lot on these older Denali's. This is your spare tire cross member here. This thing is just gone. Lots of rust. This is a ride height sensor. This talks to your suspension module to tell you kind of what's going on, and that's probably one of the reasons the suspension light is on. Now, I've already kind of worked on this thing a little bit. I didn't want to get too carried away because I do want to film some of this, but I did remove the engine harness just to get it out of the way. That thing was oilier than a Chick-fil-A chicken patty, I tell you what. So in the first video, we talked about how somebody already had their mitts all over this thing, and they did an oil pan gasket, but it still somehow pukes oil everywhere. Now, there's not supposed to be a bolt here. That's for another application, but there is supposed to be a bolt there and over there. And also, this should not just be floating. This should be there with a 13mm nut right there. Also, there should be a vent hose. Let me find it. Oh, here it is. Yep. Yeah, that is supposed to be there. Now, I understand it's a little difficult to get to that, but like, it's not that hard. So what else do we have? I mean, we got oil just up puking from this old gal. Just everywhere. So I don't know. I mean, all that stuff's getting replaced anyways. But new water pump. You know, things are looking up. We have that remanufactured alternator. That's definitely going to go in the garbage. Manifold heat shields, those are non-existent. Other than that, I mean, most things are fine. So let's just pop this drivetrain out, and we'll get her on a stand. The transmission, I'm going to hang on to it. Oh, hang on a second. Yep. Somebody left out the top stud for the transfer case. That's another difficult bolt to get to. You need a stubby wrench, but you know, that requires buying tools and having to work a little harder. So kudos to the guy that performed these repairs. Oh, get out of my face. Beauty. All right, well, engine is now out. Now, generally these transfer cases should pop right off, but as you'll notice, somebody used RTV where they did not need to. These usually have just a paper gasket in between. There's a seal on the output of the transmission and the input of the transfer case. There's no need for RTV. So let's just see what happens if I don't know, try to, yeah, it's pretty well stuck. I'm gonna have to get that off there. All right, well, that took entirely too much time. As you can tell, there is a paper gasket still there. And looks like bro used an entire tube of RTV somehow, and moisture still got in there. Oh, looks like we have two gaskets actually. Now that is completely unnecessary. Like I said before, there's a seal here to keep transfer case fluid in the transfer case, and there's a seal in there too to keep transmission fluid in the transmission. Now maybe on the 4L60, there was no seal here, so fluid could go all the way into this adapter housing, and yes, you did need a seal there to keep the fluid from leaking out, but that's not the case on these 6L80s. So the fact of the matter is, it's getting a little late, So what we're gonna do is just quick get this transmission off, and in the next video you're gonna see the engine on a stand. We're gonna start tearing it down, figure out why it's leaking everywhere. So basically I'm just gonna get these torque converter bolts out, what's left of the bell housing bolts, which reminds me now I need to order a couple of them guys, and clean up, get this frame back over here out of the rain. So stay tuned for part 3.